All right, everyone. Welcome to December's PatternFly community meeting, the last one of 2022. I'm Nicole. I'm the PatternFly Scrum Master and one of the React devs. And I have a few topics to run us through before we get into some of the enhancements and updates from the PatternFly team. So I'll jump right into them. The first is a call out. We have an ongoing survey the research team is conducting with PatternFly right now about release adoption. It should only take about 5 or 10 minutes, but we would absolutely love as many product teams, especially from Red Hat, who use PatternFly to have at least one representative fill out the survey, especially someone who is involved in adopting PatternFly releases, whether that's technically or just part of the product roadmap. We're trying to plan out our more regular major release process, and we want to make sure we've heard from product teams about their methods and desires for adoption. So if you fully complete the survey with your name and email, there's a chance you could win some reward zone points if you're a Red Hat employee. So that's an incentive. And if you are not the person to fill out the survey, but know who that might be on your team and could pass it along, that'd be fabulous. So that is the first topic here. And first call out. The second is actually a little more of an open question. I was curious if anyone on this call might have some insight into. I've begun kind of seeking more product input on this topic. It's basically any of the React consumers or JavaScript consumers of PatternFly. We're curious if people could let us know what format of modules they need for the JavaScript imports. Currently, PatternFly distributes ESM, UDM modules, which I think is a thing technically, and CommonJS. So it's a lot of ways that we distribute our JavaScript, which in terms of build and maintenance is quite heavy lift. So we don't want to be shipping more than we need to. And with the major release on the calendar for next year, we're hoping that we could maybe take advantage of that opportunity to trim it down some. But I'm curious to hear what kinds of format people use and need. So does anyone on this call happen to know that and want to call it out while we're here?
I know a lot of projects that I've been on, they use ESM and CommonJS.
Okay, yeah, CommonJS is probably the oldest of these technologies, or the one that's, I imagine, what people primarily using TypeScript to consume PatternFly is the one the fewest products might be using now. So that's good to hear that, as far as you're aware, that was the case. Do you know which products those were, Don?
Not off the top of my head. I can go find out for you if you want.
Well, if you have time, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
But yeah, just in general. Anybody else have a preference or a knowledge of a necessity for particular formats? Okay, that's fine. Maybe I'll put the bug in your ear because I'm probably going to start following up with people kind of individually to do more pointed investigation into this. So if you don't answer right now, that's fine, but you're probably going to hear the question again. All right, I'll keep moving on up through updates. All right, next. The major release timeline. I hinted that next year we're looking for a major release of PatternFly. And hopefully that's not new news to the people on this call, but It's the first major release we've had in a long time. It'll be version 5 of PatternFly. And it's not a rewrite or a major like update in the sense that there's like a whole new framework or anything crazy like that. All of the existing components will continue to exist. It's like a lot of efforts pulled into this major release include things like updating officially to React 18, officially supporting dark theme, and cleaning up, like I said, some of the build and distribution work. We do, as of right now, still have 2 more feature releases for PatternFly 4 that we're planning to release. One hopefully in the next week, mid-December, and then another release will be at the end of January. So if you have anything that you have been chomping at the bit, you need for PatternFly 4, absolutely reach out to the team, let us know. There's just a little bit more time. But after the end of January, for a few months, it'll be kind of all hands on deck for the PatternFly team to be working toward version 5 of PatternFly to be released in early June after Summit, hopefully when a lot of products have some downtime and possibly opportunity to update to V5. It will include code mods to expedite that process for people making the update, since it will include breaking changes. So hopefully that will be a helpful resource for people. And that's a rough update on the timeline and the plan. So if anyone has any questions about that or wants to double check with anything with us or raise any concerns, definitely do that. All right. I'll pause for 1 sec in case anyone has anything they want to say about major release.
Hey, can you hear me? Sorry for having.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was just gonna say, if we have time at the end, I can run through. We actually just got off a call, kind of presenting a deck that runs through the essentially what Nicole just highlighted. So just in more words. So if we have time, we can run through that at the end and flesh out a little more detail. But I'll go ahead and hold off for now. I'll link that in here too, just in case that's helpful.
Oh, great. Yeah, and I can distribute those slides along with the recording of this presentation at the end too, for anyone who's curious. All right. The last update I have is information about an accessibility scorecard effort. Basically, UXD, who houses the PatternFly team at Red Hat, has a few goals of helping to improve accessibility of Red Hat products, and especially web-based products, especially products that use PatternFly. We want to be raising awareness of accessibility compliance and improve our product experiences and quality. So what we've begun doing is distributing this scorecard template. It's very early in the process. I can link. The link for the scorecard is on the slide, but I can drop it in the chat also. One moment. For anyone who's interested, and I'll share my screen so you can see a little bit of what I'm talking about. So this scorecard is basically a tool, especially for products at Red Hat that are web-based that partner with the UXD team, where together we can kind of walk through the interface and evaluate the state of accessibility in your product, hopefully relatively quickly. And once it's completed, it'll hopefully aid in identifying like low-hanging fruit opportunities for improving accessibility and bringing it up to 508 compliance. which is important. So that's something that we've kind of begun doing product by product basis, starting with a little bit, some of the smaller products that we have good relationships with, to kind of test run this a little bit and see how we can benefit product usage. So if you're interested at all, I definitely recommend checking out the scorecard template we have here. And probably over time, UXD will be reaching out to more and more product teams to engage them in the opportunity to evaluate their accessibility status and possibly improve it. I also will drop another link in the chat quickly. What I did take some time to go through patternfly.org and fill it out using this scorecard. And so that's the link I just shared in the chat. It's also on the slide linked. It's also linked on the slide as well. So this is our documentation website for PatternFly, not the components themselves. The components themselves are actually quite a bit more rigorously tested for accessibility. But the collective documentation website hadn't gotten as much attention. So I took the time to go through the website and kind of do this audit on the accessibility and fill out the scorecard. And so what you can see is an example of a scorecard that's been filled out. And even there are a handful of things that we have not done on patternfly.org, which we could do to further improve accessibility. But generally, I think it's a good example of what it could look like and how it maps out what could be done in the future and the gaps. So I think it's an exciting effort. And if anyone has any questions, if you're excited to see this and you would like to partner with us as a product, like absolutely reach out. If you have any feedback, concerns, anything, like let us know. But I think hopefully something everybody will be hearing more about next year, and slowly engaging with us on it. So yay for more accessibility. Okay. I think that's all of the updates I have. Oh, so the other thing I have on the slide deck are links to the latest release notes. Oh, that title is wrong, but it is the release notes from the last two releases that we've had since the last community meeting. There's been two, 14 and 15, milestones 14 and 15 were released. So you can see there are highlights and the link to the comprehensive release notes. Some of the highlights will be demoed at the end of this meeting, but if you want to see the full list, the links are on the slides right here. And hopefully, as I mentioned earlier, within the next few days, by the end of this week, optimistically, we'll have another release out as well, the last one of the year. So yeah, if you're looking for those links, they're there. And if you have any questions about anything on those links in the release notes, yeah, feel free to reach out. Okay. With that, I think we're ready to jump into the the PatternFly team updates. I'm going to hand over walking through these, emceeing the updates to Evan, so I can help my son just a little bit. But yeah, so I think we have a few. I'll hand it over.
No problem. Yeah, I'm going to steal the screen share so you don't have to worry about that. There we go. Should be the same screen. And just a heads up for Michael and Tatani, I'm going to pass to you each to kind of lead your teams through the updates. I know that you guys do a lot of work and sometimes have a lot of updates, but tend to let the teams shine, which is awesome. We really like seeing all the work that everyone's doing, but want to make sure that, although I'm sure everyone here knows who you are, that we can have you kind of representing the team as you pass off to all the different team members. So yeah, Michael, I'll start with you. So it looks like for core updates, I think there's one on here. So I don't know if you want to speak towards that or pass to Burundi, and then if there's any other core related topics that you want to toss out here in addition, feel free.
Yeah, thanks. Should I share my screen? Usually I'll share my screen for showing the update, but I can just talk about it too. It's not necessarily anything I need to demo.
Yeah, whatever is easier. I've got it up here.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. So there we're looking at it. Yeah, pretty simple update. Just there are instances where pagination's inset, which is like its left and right gutter, the spacer that like indents it to align with content that's above and below the pagination, and keep the pagination buttons and all that sort of stuff from touching the far edges of the box. Should be a custom inset, and this is a pretty common theme across PatternFly components. We have this feature where you can define custom insets for tables and data lists and toolbars and all that sort of stuff. And pagination is very similar to all those things I just mentioned. So we didn't have support for this, and so we just added it. And so you can specify any of the PatternFly spacing spacers. You can specify that as the inset to be used, and they're responsive to. So you can specify different spacers at different breakpoints using the class-based modifier that Evan's highlighting there. And then on top of that, we also have, we don't have an example of it, it's just in the documentation, but a page insets modifier that will match the page Chrome inset. It's a bit of a dynamic inset that's used around all of the stuff that wraps the content in a page layout inside of PatternFly. So like the masthead, navigation, the main content area, you can set the pagination to have that same dynamic inset if that's what you're going for. And that's pretty much it. I only mention it because we've completed the work in core and it's slated to be worked on in React. So that feature hasn't landed quite yet. So this is a sneak preview of that work coming up that'll be available in the React pagination component. And kudos to Burundi for working on this. However, I didn't have time to ask Burundi to present. And he's shifted some priorities toward his primary product. And so I figure I'll just mention it for him, but kudos to him as always for contributing to core.
Yeah, and one shout out just for anyone who's interested or knows of someone who's interested. Burundi actually came to us and said, you know, hey, I've got this itch to learn more about development and kind of get more hands-on with, you know, CSS and HTML. Can I join you guys and kind of learn the ropes? And so it's been really great to just kind of see someone put themselves out there. And, you know, like Michael mentioned, he had some downtime from another project he was working on, and so was able to kind of join the core team, get some hands-on training from you know, several of the core devs, and has been contributing PRs and given some great feedback for us as well. So yeah, it seems like over the last year or two, we've had more people kind of leaning in and contributing for a bit between projects, or you know, just giving it a shot, if you will. And we love to see that. We're happy to kind of teach people where we can, and hopefully in the end, if they do go back to product work or, you know, working on a different project, it benefits everyone in the long run in any case. So really cool to hear about that. All right, thanks, Michael. Let's see. So next up, we have our React updates. Titania, if you're on the call, I'll pass over to you and maybe pass over to whoever makes sense to present here.
Yeah, sure. Good morning. So the React team's been hard at work with wrapping up some PF4 work and also starting to work toward PatternFly 5 with some tackling some of our low-hanging fruit issues first. So we have a few people presenting today, and I think we'll pass it back to Michael Coker. He made an update in the spinner component for inline support. And then after Michael, we have a bunch of other folks who have also made some updates, and often with the progress, and which went toward work he did with the multi-file upload as well, which he'll be presenting both of those. And Katie worked on tab actions, and Eric has worked on adding status icons to the banner, and Jenny adding inline link progress support to the button. So back to you, Michael.
Thanks. Yeah, so this was part of some core work yeah, I guess core and React work that I was working on. And basically it just adds a new it's another size for the spinner, but it's not part of the size prop. It's Boolean, I believe, for inline size for the spinner. So the spinner's sizes were previously they're fixed sizes that align with our icon size, font sizes in PatternFly. So you could choose small, medium, large, etc. And then you always have the option of setting a custom property specifically to whatever size you'd like to specify. So that could be an M, a rim, it could be 50% of the viewport width if you'd like to do something like that. But we had enough use cases for where the spinner should basically just inherit the font size or match the size of the context of the stuff around it, that it seemed like this would be a good variation. So basically, as Evan's demonstrating here, wherever you put the spinner, it's going to inherit whatever the font size is of that block, and that's going to be the size of the spinner. So in all of these examples, there's no size specified for the spinner. It's just going to inherit the context around it and match whatever that context is. And that's pretty much it.
Oh, Evan, you're muted.
Dang it. Well, I was just saying thanks, Michael. Austin, if it's easier for you to share your screen with a couple updates, go for it. Otherwise, if you want me to click through, just let me know.
I mean, I can share it, or I can just shoot you the links.
Oh, I've got links.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
All right. So yeah, we're going to start with some updates made on the progress component, which we now have the ability to add helper text to the progress component that just goes and lives right below the progress bar to convey some additional information to users when you need to do that. It can take pretty much any component that you want to put in there, but our kind of use case that we had in mind relies on using the helper text component that we provide, which this example shows how you can wire up the variant of the helper text component to match the variant of the progress component. And then you can have the color of the text match the color that is being shown in the progress bar. So when you have success, everything's green, warning, everything's yellow, danger, everything's red. But like I said, you can put whatever you'd want in there. If you want to put a truncate in there or a paragraph, it's fully composable. And one place that we are already using this new helper text functionality internally is the file upload multiple component, which the example now has a little checkbox that when you enable it will cause any files that you try and upload to actually get corrupted and fail the upload process, which lets you kind of see how you can use this helper text to tell your user, hey, this file that you tried to upload, something went wrong. Here's the error message that might help you figure out what went wrong and how to resolve it. But that is, again, it's a fully composable, customizable thing. If you have, custom text that you want to create and pass in there, you can fully do that, or use the helper text and sync the color up in the same way that we did in the example in progress. I think that pretty much runs through all my updates.
Great, cool. Thanks, Austin. It's cool to see the update and then how it's actually turned around and used right away. So moving on, it looks like we have Katie up with tab actions.
Yep. Are you gonna keep your screen or should I share? Okay, answers that question. So this is a new feature for tabs, specifically tabs. So a single tab will get this new property called actions. And this will let you add extra buttons to the end of a tab. So you can see there's two new demos here for help action and help and close actions. So the help action is just adding a single new tab action that has the icon that's like the little question mark, and it also has a popover. So if you click on those, it'll have some lorem ipsum text. So those can be customized for each tab. The help and close actions show a similar example with the help hop over as well as a close button. So if you close the button, it'll remove. There are 2 ways of adding the close button just for reference, because if you scroll up slightly, the previous dynamic demo also added the close before, but that was a all or nothing. It will, if it's a handler that you put on the tabs component, and it will add the close button to every tab. So you can still do that. If you pass that on close property to tabs, it will still add the close button to every tab. If you wanted to just have one handler instead of just pick and choose which tabs get the close button. But the actions property will still work with that. So you can still pass the help actions to every tab if you want as well. So you have 2 options for the close button, and the way with the actions property on tab is just more flexible, and you have fine-tuned control over what you want to add to each tab. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Let's see. It looks like next up we've got Eric with banners, and then Jenny.
Hello, everyone. Evan, do you mind if I steal this screen share from you?
Oh, please do. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. There we go. So for our banner component, right here, I am sharing what the banner component looked like as of the 2022.12 release. Previously, we had status or being signified by color alone. So here you can see, the info banner is that light blue, danger banner is a red background, and so on and so forth. And while we did include, we have a screen reader text prop, which would render a visually hidden text, which is great for assistive text such as screen readers to announce that text without visually showing it. One thing we noticed is that for users who may have some form of color blindness, using the background color alone to signify status may not be great. And as you can see here in Chrome DevTools, if I click through some of the emulation of vision deficiencies, you can see kind of how the color alone might affect things for some users. So now, as of our 2022.15 release, the examples for the banner have been updated. So now we have a basic example, which if you do not want to represent some sort of status or severity with the banner, you just say, hey, I really like the color of this red banner, and that's it. You could use a basic banner, which doesn't convey any sort of status or severity. And if I open the TS code toggle, you may notice that there's no screen reader text prop being passed in. Now we also have a status example, which for this, we pass in the screen reader text prop like we previously did to render that hidden text of info banner, danger banner, so on and so forth. We also show and recommend the use of icons to help convey that status in addition to the background color. And while there's no actual prop for passing in the icon, this example shows a possible way you could set up the layout within the banner content. So you're essentially just passing in the icon yourself and any other content you want. This is just kind of showing, if you want a flex layout where the icon's all the way to the left followed by some content, you can do it this way. So it's pretty flexible in terms of your potential use case. And that's about it for the update to banner.
Great. Thanks, Eric. And last, it looks like we have Jenny talking towards button.
Hey, everybody. All right, let's share. Okay, So neat new feature on the button here. Now we have a in progress inline loading state. So as you see right here, the pause loading logs demonstrates that. Before we only had this primary and secondary support for that, but now we have inline support, which is cool. And you would add that inline support by setting the is inline prop on button like you would normally do. And then you can add a hook to set if inline is loading, and then you can change the text depending on the state. And you can do that up here. So you can use the existing is loading prop to update what's going on with the loading state. And yeah, it's a neat little new update. So that's about it for me.
Good deal. All right, thanks, Jenny. Let's see, back to this here. So it looks like that wraps up the React updates. I just have one quick website update because it got merged the other day, and I'm excited to see it, even though it's not quite implemented yet. And that is that we've enabled the tertiary nav on the website. And I wanted to speak towards this briefly because our PatternFly org repo, so we already spoke towards core, which is our CSS, HTML code, and React, which is React. And the org repo is an additional repo that houses two packages. So it's got a directory called v4, which is actually our website code, and our like our documentations, our content lives there as well. So that's all kind of custom to our site. And then the other package is called documentation framework. And that's what actually takes all of our markdown files and our examples from React and Core and spits them up into the docs site. So we can run our v4 directory through that documentation framework, and it spits out our website. For both Core and React repos, you can individually run them through the documentation framework, and it spits out our workspaces, which will just have docs for each one of those repos specifically. And so this update was made in the documentation framework. It's also what we're using to build documentation for our PatternFly extensions moving forward. And this is something that we're using internally to spin up docs for existing extensions, but also allow teams that contribute back to PatternFly extensions to use this documentation framework. And we're trying to build it so that it's flexible and user-friendly, so that code that's built external to the PatternFly team can be hosted and documented in a way that matches kind of what we use as well. So with this update, Alston, if you don't mind, I'm going to use your PR preview link just because I know you were excited to get it up and working. So let's show it here. And all this enables for us is, currently all of our side nav sections are, I'll zoom in a little bit here, but it's kind of one main header that's expandable for the most part, except for, I think, the community page is a single page. And then it's got one level of links below it. And that's worked great for the most part for several years, but we've gotten to the point where we say, we've got pages, we've got more information or more pages that relate maybe to some of these items. And for some things like components, we've added tabs across the top, which works well. But there's other things where it would make sense to have kind of increased grouping opportunities. And so this tertiary nav that we have added just lets us nest another expandable section inside of a side nav. So in this case, again, this is just a PR preview link, but it just shows kind of a visible example because we haven't actually implemented anything yet on the website, but we could have extensions, expand, and then we could list each extension here, and then that specific extension could expand to then show those tertiary links, which could be individual components, for instance. So they're still components. We still maybe want to list them out by extension, but they don't live in the component section. So we list them inside the extension section. So that's kind of one example of how we could use this to just kind of organize content better. We've done a research study previously as well to learn a little bit more about the information architecture and where we have pages on the site now versus where people might actually naturally expect them to live, and are planning on kind of taking a step back to potentially reorganize some of that to make it easier to find information, and this could be helpful there. But again, if anyone here is contributing or thinking about contributing an extension back to PatternFly, this is something that we've added that might help with the docs as well. and lives in that documentation framework. Let's see. All right, so that's all I had for the website. So moving on, it looks like we've got about 20 minutes left. So I do want to open up the floor for Q&A. If anybody has any questions about anything we've presented here or anything else, now's the time to chime in, raise your hand, throw it in the chat, whatever is easiest. And I'll go ahead and actually, maybe I can rewind to the agenda here just as a, let's see. Well, I guess that's not the most helpful, but. And if there aren't any questions right now, we can go ahead and talk through a couple other items that we had that, well, we've got some team members on the line might be helpful. The first, I'm happy to kind of walk through our plans for the major release. You know, we've chatted through it and talked about timelines a bit and kind of, you know, in passing, but can go ahead and share our plans at this point for where we stand and just kind of catch you up on, since the Red Hat Recharge, which is our kind of annual shutdown over the holidays, is coming up around the corner. We're planning to have our ducks in a row and come back, you know, ready with 2023 to hit the ground running. So this will kind of show what that looks like. And for any of you on the Red Hat UXD team, we did just see the slide deck, so my apologies in advance if this is a repeat for you. All right, so our major release, just I'll move through this quickly because I know that we've got just 20 minutes or so, but just a quick call out of what it isn't. So, you know, PatternFly 3 to PatternFly 4 was a big disruption in a good way in that it got us to where we are today, but it also, PatternFly 3 included Angular and Bootstrap. You know, everything was kind of built on top of Bootstrap styling, and shifting to PatternFly 4, we dropped Bootstrap in favor of our own in-house styles. So obviously that affected most of the code, if not every piece of code, which, you know, was a big change. PatternFly 4 to PatternFly 5, we are updating the name there internally, although we'll still just call ourselves PatternFly, but because it is a major release and we want to make sure that we're sticking to semantic version naming. But that said, it's really just an enhancement of what we have already in place. So we do have some changes that would technically be breaking that we, you know, avoid at all costs to not impact our consumers and our normal workflow. So we're going to go ahead and take this as an advantage to, you know, to make those enhancements, and we'll update the name accordingly. But it's still going to be the same React code, PatternFly styles that you know today. It's also not a fresh start. So again, we're not dropping all of our components and starting over again. That would be a big shocker. But instead, all the components we have will remain in the PatternFly 5 release, and I'll talk through in a minute. But we're implementing an official deprecated /next system that'll kind of clarify that a little bit as far as like, hey, is that a component going to be removed or added or updated? That'll just kind of set the way for an official guidelines that we can follow and communicate moving forward. Also, traditionally, I hinted at this, but we've kind of kept breaking changes or major releases at an arm's length for essentially as long as possible until, you know, the necessity required us to update, and then we try and kind of get everything that we can in one big chunk so that we can, you know, take a step back again and avoid that for a while. That provides consistency, but it also kind of limits the innovations that we can do in some cases if we built something in a way that consumers are fighting with to implement, you know, the way that they need it. A lot of times we either have to build a workaround essentially that will work without breaking anyone, or, you know, we can essentially push more code and more enhancements into these components. But moving forward, we're switching to an annual cadence for major releases. So they will be smaller, more targeted, definitely you know, planned out. So we'll take a step back and kind of consider what are the updates that we're being asked for and that we're seeing, you know, things that aren't working that we're having to kind of fight with and figure out, you know, what makes the most sense to target each year. So they will be very purposeful and communicated and should be on a regular cadence here moving forward, maybe similar to other dependencies that you have. So that's what it's not. Here's what it is, what it will include. So React 18 support, we currently do have experimental support, which means we've managed to update so that we're not a blocker to products looking to update to React 18. But that said, we've found that some of our own tooling and dependencies need to be updated there. Our testing suite, for instance, we're updating to React Testing Library. And just want to make sure that we have a chance to go through full testing internally with React 18 support. So, we'll officially support that moving forward with this release. Along those same lines, dark theme. So some of you may already be using a dark theme today. We do have variables in place that you can use to customize PatternFly, but they weren't built with theming in mind. And so with this major release, we're really expanding that variable system and working very closely with the design team to build out these design tokens. So we can speak a common language between design and development, and we can target things that today maybe don't exist. And if you want to customize, you can write a custom CSS rule for, which then overrides PatternFly and can cause some conflicts or some issues as far as maintainability. So with that additional kind of theming support, that'll allow us to support an official dark theme that will take advantage of that system, and it'll also be more flexible. So down the road, it'll unblock us from any other enhancements that we'd like to make. We might not get every single thing perfect, but this will definitely be rebuilt with the idea of flexibility, customization down the road, and hopefully we can communicate that and document it in a way that is approachable, again, for developers, but also for designers to kind of close the communication gap there a little bit as needed. And the last thing, I touched on this in the last slide, but deprecated and next components. So these you may already have heard of. We've got some out already, but again, we've found that some of our components historically were built in ways that were trying to do everything and maybe missed the mark, or maybe products have evolved into wanting to use components a different way and adding enhancement upon enhancement, or adding more code basically to try and tackle this. Gets the job done, but makes those components more fragile and may make future enhancements harder and harder to kind of work together. So what we've found is, if in some cases it can be beneficial to actually take a step back and rethink how the component is built. A good example might be the composable table versus the legacy table, which legacy table is kind of a one size fits all. And if you need new functionality, we'll try and put more code in there to enable that and not step on the toes of the other code that lives there. And then the composable table was a kind of a rethinking that maintains the flexibility that you'd be looking for, but kind of simplifies the code a lot and makes it more maintainable and more user friendly. So this system kind of enables that. The idea there is that we have a new set of components moving forward that we'll call next components, which are essentially, if we do think a re-implementation makes sense and we're working on that, we don't have to necessarily wait for a release or a major release to put those out there. We'll have a new directory that you can import from if you're interested to either test these kind of next versions of components, or if they have features or flexibility that you're looking for today and you just want to adopt them in place of the existing component, they'll be available and we'll be shipping those. Along those lines, we'll also have a directory of deprecated components. So, just like with the composable table, the original table is still available for users to continue using. That said, we are encouraging everyone who's picking up a table or looking to implement one to use the new version, but we'll keep components around as opposed to dropping them or having questions of how long is this available. So the deprecated component directory will let us move that into another import that you can pull in from if you're still using it. And that'll just indicate to you that, we've got a better solution. It's officially out. That said, this original component is still available, but after a year of being deprecated, it is, and is an option to remove from the design system, if that makes sense. So really just trying to kind of get some more flexibility, some more standards in place with this release. Oh, and one quick note, I believe with this release, we've got 6 or more components that are being marked as deprecated. I think some of them already have alternate solutions in our system today. So it'll just be a way of documenting that and making sure that we're giving that advanced notice. We've also got a handful of next components that will be delivered as well. So the timeline we're looking at here is basically the first 5 or 6 months of next year. So Nicole mentioned we've got 2 releases left for V4 for our existing workflow. So the one is 2022.16, the release we're looking to get out this week, and that's in testing today. And then the last one is our first sprint of next year, so 2023.01. And we've pulled in issues to both of those milestones that product teams have asked us to prioritize or that are time sensitive, anything that makes sense there. And so once we wrap up that first milestone in January, our team's going to shift to focusing on this major release work, and we've dedicated 3 sprints towards that next year. So we're sticking with our 3-week sprint cadence. So that'll basically run from early February through early April. That'll give us 3 sprints, sprint 2, 3, and 4 of next year. And in those, the core team, will focus on early on issues that have React follow-ups, so they can get those wrapped up early. And the React team will focus early on issues that don't have core work, so they can knock those out while core is working on some issues for them. And then hopefully that'll help with the handoff process for us. Another thing that'll be built alongside these PRs are code mods, which are snippets of code that will help us pass over to product teams to actually update your code base automatically. So we had those with our last large release and got great feedback that it greatly simplified the process. If we can update the code automatically for you, like if it's a renamed prop or something along those lines, we'll do that. You also have the option of just seeing all the changes without applying those fixes. And if there's ever something that we can't necessarily make an update, or it's uncertain if we make the change, if it'll affect something else, we can still give a warning and point you to where that code lives in your code base if it needs kind of just another kind of thorough vetting. So that'll take us through early April, and then we've allowed ourselves about 2 months for testing, iteration, bug fixes. We are hoping to test with each milestone as well. So just like we typically do our 3-week testing, keep that up along the way, but allow for release candidate testing starting in early April, and then targeting a June release. And for Red Headers, that puts us after Summit, which is our kind of our big conference each year, and sometimes can be kind of a slower time for product teams. So we're definitely trying to be cognizant of timing as well, but we'll keep you updated along the way, obviously, over the next several months. And I spoke towards this already, again, hoping to test along the way at each milestone. Code mods will be built with PRs that are merged. So when we are testing these versions, we should have the code mods that go side by side with them. And developers can actually run the code mods as they test the code to test not only the breaking changes, but also the helper functions that we've got to apply those for consumers. Release candidate testing, we touched on that. And then the last thing is just, again, touching on the switch from these kind of delayed major releases every 2.5 to 3.5 years or so to a planned cadence of annual major releases. And that'll just avoid kind of building up technical debt, but allow us to adapt to consumer requests more quickly. So we don't have to kind of say, well, we'd love to do that, but it would be a breaking change. So, come to us again in a couple of years. We can kind of, adapt more quickly there. Yep, so there we go. So that's everything that we had around the major release right now. Our team leads on core and React repos are pulling together the milestones right now. We've got kind of rough drafts put together, but want to take a look as a team and make sure that the order of operations for the different issues that we have planned make sense. And we can definitely share those out maybe at the next community meeting for anyone who's interested in following along and seeing what we're working on. And I think that's all I had on the major release there. So it looks like we still have 6 minutes, and I've still got a good amount of people on the call here. So with that said, any questions around that topic or anything else that we've gone through today? All right, well, you're a very attentive group. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Like Nicole mentioned, we do have our office hours tomorrow from 11 to 12. So feel free to bring any questions at all that we can help you with, or just any topics at all there. We'll look forward to chatting with some of you there. And if not, thank you again for joining today. Hope everyone has a great afternoon.